It's hard to find the right close reading passages for younger students. Too easy and they're going to get bored and you're not going to have anything to teach them, and too hard they're going to get overwhelmed and want to just tune out. In this channel, there is a whole playlist dedicated to close reading, and one of the videos there is how to choose the right close reading passages and what you're looking for. So if you're not sure, you're going to want to check that one out. The playlist is linked in the comments below, but today we're going to talk about coming up with ideas for your own close reading passages. Before we begin, I have a free guide to teaching close reading to younger students, and the link is in the descriptions below, and you can download that. You'll have 2 weeks of lesson plans as well as a couple reading passages so you can see what they should look like, and then also some tips and tricks that I learned along the way that's going to make close reading a lot easier in your classroom. So writing your own close reading passages, you're probably thinking, why would I want to do that? That sounds like a lot of work. I know when I was looking for the right passages, I spent almost my whole entire prep period looking through my filing cabinet, going through books, trying to find the right ones, and I just wanted them at my fingertips, and I wanted them the way I wanted them. I was kind of picky. So I really kind of figured out that writing your own passages made it a lot easier on you. So here are some things to consider when you're writing your own passages. And once you're done with this video, I think you'll see that it's actually pretty easy. Start by thinking of the things you're already teaching. Is there something upcoming that you just want to have a little extra oomph in your lessons? What do your lesson plans look like for the month? Are you teaching maybe a geography unit in social studies? If so, then you can maybe write a passage on maps, or a family reading a map on a family vacation. Maybe you're teaching fractions in math and you want to write a passage about two siblings trying to share a bag of M&Ms. Anything you're teaching your students can be turned into a close reading passage. If it's closer to Christmas, you can write a recipe for gingerbread cookies. Maybe it's something that they're learning to do toward the end of the school year. They're excited to ride their bikes. The topics are endless. Maybe writing a letter to a friend. You can really kind of see how this will help you figure out which close reading passages to write. Having your close reading passages match what you're already teaching them is going to give your students an extra opportunity to learn the topic you're covering. It can be as simple as putting in a couple spelling words that they've had. They're going to really be excited when they can recognize those words. This can also give you an opportunity to teach things that you used to be able to teach and maybe you don't have the time to do so anymore. I know in May we would always do this gigantic butterfly unit. It would be a month long. It was glorious. It was so much fun. We would hatch the caterpillars, we would have a journal, we would just read a new caterpillar book every month, not every month, every day. And it was just so much fun, and the kids benefited from it so much time. But as the years progressed, I had to cut back, and each year I had to cut something out of that butterfly unit, and it wasn't as good. So to remedy that, I made sure that 1 week of close reading was all about butterfly close reading passages. And I wrote a passage about Mrs. Hull's classroom finding a caterpillar and watching it grow and hatch and everything. And the students were so excited because it's what they were doing, and they were learning it as something like they were looking in on their lives, and they just loved it so much. And this can help with writer's block too, because a lot of times I'll sit there and stare at my screen. I'll get ready to write and I've got a Google Doc open and I don't know what to write. Like blank papers or blank sheets, blank screens looking at me. It's like a nemesis and I don't know how to get started. I always found it was easier to write about something I was already planning because it was already fresh in my head. All right, so that's writing about what you know and what you're doing. And that's going to be really good for your students because it's just going to be an extra opportunity to learn what you're teaching. Once you've written your passage, I want you to look back at what you've written and sprinkle in some vocabulary or phrases that your students are unfamiliar with. You don't want to overdo it. Usually 2 is really good, because when we talk about vocabulary in a later lesson in this playlist, I'll show you why it's important to really choose 2 words to work on instead of a list of 10 to memorize. But you can do two things. You can either write your passage and then just look at a word and maybe, just bump that word up a little bit and use a synonym that they might not know, and then they can use the context to figure it out. Or if you know a word or a topic, maybe you're doing a nonfiction science unit and you have some facts you want to do, take those words first and then write sentences around them. Okay, so that was Write about what you're teaching already and make sure that you are crafting your passages around those vocabulary words. The next tip is to alternate between nonfiction and fiction. But what's helpful is you can take a topic and write one for each. So if you're studying habitats in science, maybe you can write a nonfiction piece about a different type of habitat for a plant or an animal. And then for fiction, fictional passage, you can take that same animal and maybe make characters and how they are living in that habitat. Think of like the city mouse and the country mouse. Like I always kind of liked those stories. I don't know why they always appealed to me where, maybe the animal's lost and can't really survive there and just needs to find their way home. Something like that. Do you see what I mean? And writing a fiction or a nonfiction passage is really good. Is a really good chance to take those reading skills you've taught them and use those in your nonfiction passages or your fiction passages. For example, cause and effect. You could write something on erosion, or maybe compare and contrast. You can write a fictional story on two siblings who are, well, like in my family, we have twins. Our 20-year-olds are twins, and they don't like to dress alike, but they are alike. And so we could do compare and contrast about two twins, and that could be something in your reading passages as well. Same thing goes with math. If you're studying money, maybe you can write a passage about someone having a lemonade stand and earning money so they can buy a new bike or something like that. All right, so we had, what did we have? We had write about what you know, use vocabulary, and then write fiction and nonfiction. And the next thing is make sure that your text passage is a little longer than what you think it might be. Don't dumb it down for your students. Ideally, you're looking for 3 to 4 paragraphs with 3 to 4 sentences in each, and the reading level should be just a touch higher than their independent level. Close reading is not independent reading because you're not expecting your students to read this passage word for word. It's not a decoding lesson. You want to teach your students to feel confident when they are looking at a passage that is harder than what they regularly read. So you write about what you know and what you're doing. Use vocabulary. You alternate between fiction and nonfiction. Don't be afraid to write a harder passage. And the last one is publishing. It's important how your passages look, especially if you're going to write a lot of them. You're going to want to choose a kid-friendly font. I know, like, my kids always tease me about the Comic Sans font, and I never quite understood why it's such a dramatically terrible font. But it really works for, especially if you're just going to open up, just a plain old document and you're going to write out your passage. Comic Sans works fine. But look for typesets and fonts that is the way your students would write. So like instead of that squirrely swoopy A, you have like the regular stick and ball A, things like that. You're going to want to look for that. Or if it's the number 4, make sure it kind of looks how you would write it instead of the one with the triangle. You're also going to want to make sure your font is big enough so they can annotate it. Usually about 18 to 20 is pretty good with, maybe 1.5 spaces in between, but you want to make sure there's enough space in there. Keep all your text on one page. I know it was always just so frustrating, especially for struggling readers, to have to flip the page over or turn it with the staple, and then they've lost their place, and it's game over. So I usually like to make sure it's all on one page, so I just kind of fit it in so it works. And add a title and an author byline. You're the author, and your students need to see, hey, she wrote that. It's going to be some good street cred when you're ready to do your writing workshops. You can say, when I was writing that last piece with for close reading, remember that one about about the reptiles and the and their habitat. It was hard, and here's what I figured out to do, and that helped me write this passage. You can use a picture. I usually do, and I just usually grab something off, free clip art off of Google or something like that. And just, if I wanted to be a little extra, I would make a color one and a black and white one. But when you're choosing a passage, make sure it doesn't give away too much of your subject. You want them to learn from the text and not the picture. So it can match the title, when I wrote my butterfly close reading passages, obviously I could put a butterfly there. But if I'm writing a passage on a lemonade stand, the boy getting the money for the lemonade stand to buy a new bike, I might not want to add all those pictures in there. I might just want to draw a picture of a glass of lemonade. I don't mean draw a picture. I can't draw, but find a picture and stick that in there. And it's important to keep that same format for all your passages. It's going to help your students with that routine, and they'll know what to expect, and it's just going to be easier for you. So I would create a template mostly on Google Docs, and I would just make a copy of that template for my new pages each time. So I hope you enjoyed these 5 tips. I hope they're helpful for you and you can see that maybe it's not as scary. A lot of times I would just put on Netflix, like, I watch I love The West Wing, or, Grace and Frankie, or The Crown. Usually I can't really concentrate if there's words, but I've seen those 3 shows 3,000 times. And so, especially The West Wing. I'm obsessed. But anyway, I can turn that on and just focus on writing. But if not, turn on some classical music, or just kind of find yourself some quiet time. I would usually find that in 20 minutes I could get probably 2 or 3 passages out. And also remember, you're teaching from one passage the entire week. So for a month, you only need 4 or 5 if it's a longer month and you have 5 weeks in it. But you don't need a lot. So I could sit there, turn on Netflix, and just maybe write, try to get all 4 done, but get a couple done, and it wasn't as hard as you think. Especially once you get good at it. Here's the cool part: once you have them, then you're going to have them for years and you can reuse them. If you use your students' names in there, which I often did, I could just go into Google Docs and change out the names for my current students. If this was helpful for you, you can like and subscribe to this YouTube channel, but I also have on TikTok and Instagram, I've made shorter videos for you to watch, so you can follow me on Teaching Firsties with Mrs. Hull on Instagram, and then Teaching the Firsties, because Teaching Firsties with Mrs. Hull was too long for TikTok. But anyway, I've had a lot of fun making those, and they're short little chunks for close reading, and maybe they'll help you out in your classroom.